wanted to just maybe take a few minutes and just talk a little bit about where we focus as Dallas County Community College District. Well, obviously, we serve a lot of communities, 165,000 individuals each year. About 82,000 of those are in our credit degree or certificate programs. The rest are in workforce, other types of non-credit and efforts, including apprenticeships and other as well. But Dallas is like a lot of places. North Texas, I know a number of people here from the North Texas area, where we're really a community of two different communities. One community, when you drive through it, you see cranes on the horizon, you see help wanted signs hanging everywhere. That part of Dallas has grown by 1 million people since 2011. That's 262 people a day moving into the area to take those 300 to 335 jobs a day that are being created to meet the needs. And then there's the other, where we see people being left behind by the economy. That median family income has declined by 15% since 2000. That they're not able to participate because they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the skills, they haven't acquired the ability or the experience in order to be able to engage in the workforce. So as a district and a board, we took on the goal, the mission of really how do we deal with income disparity and inequity of opportunity, particularly as it relates to the economy in our community. So we had to think fundamentally very differently about what we do and who we are. We took the position early on that was a little bit controversial when I arrived in Dallas. You'll hear why. When I said colleges do not have needs. Individuals have needs, employers have needs, our community has needs. Well, we are a collection of resources, of talent, of facilities, of content that have come together to really address those needs. And if we think about it that way, that means we can't possibly do this alone. So I will talk about how we make that happen. And then I want to just share with you a little bit about, let's see, here we go, our responsibilities. So put up here, help communities to grow. What we really mean by that is help our communities to be successful, to have the right kind of quality of life that we need in order to be able to live, to go to school, to raise families, to support and make that happen. And the way we do that is through economic growth, because there's only really two ways to grow GDP. Either you increase the size of the workforce or you increase the productivity of the workforce. That's pretty much it. And so as we really focus in both of those areas, how do we have that impact so that we can see our community be successful? The second is to helping our businesses to prosper. That was why we did the bringing the chambers and other groups in, so that we could really help build out grow our businesses. Because if we're not creating wealth, we're not creating jobs in the community, and that's virtually a one-to-one relationship. So we have to really support that in order to make that happen, which means we have to understand deeply what's going on in our community, both at the economic, with workforce and social level, to be able to impact this in a meaningful way. Because, as I mentioned, we see a big divide within the community. We see one part of our community where 72% of the students are going on to get some type of post-secondary credential. We see another part of the community that are being left behind in that lowest socioeconomic quartile that aren't going forward. They come from families who parents have told them all their lives, we can't afford to send you to college, and plus they don't understand it. It seems culturally foreign to them. They don't understand how it works, and so they simply aren't showing up. We coined a phrase for that population as non-consumers of higher education, because they're not even potential students. And so what we had to do was develop strategies that help them understand how they could get from where they are in life to where they want to be, and all of them want a great job. It's just they don't see how that pathway to get there, and we have to show that to them in a very, very direct way in order for them to benefit and appreciate this. So if we look at the area right now, we have a job for every unemployed person in North Texas, and that's true with a lot of the areas. We see that we have 131,000 people who need jobs. We have about that number in many cases that jobs are going unfilled in the community, and it's divided up by sector. But it's not even there. Mark and his team took a look here a while back at 1 year worth of job creation being created in North Texas, looking at 122,000 jobs that were created over a 12-month period. Of those jobs, fully 65% required a post-secondary credential. That's not the future, that's now. 32% of baccalaureate or advanced degree, 33% requiring something less than a bachelor's but more than a high school diploma to meet that need, maybe an industry-based certification, maybe a certificate or associate's degree. Then we looked at what's going on in certain sectors. For example, we see that where computer skills and mathematics skills are involved, we've got right now 53,000 openings with an average salary of $68,000 in the community. Well, when you look at what's happening in our public schools and what's coming out, only 25% we're producing with credentials and that have these skills embedded within them, while 67% of the job openings are requiring this in the area. So this gap, this mismatch between the economy and what we're seeing with the skills and knowledge and abilities of individuals has created a situation where we are seeing growing income disparity, and that's really one of the drivers that's being left behind because we're seeing our credentials not matching the demands of the economy and what's happening there. So we began to really take a hard look at this and realize that it's going to take doing some things differently in order to meet the needs. For example, paying close attention to programs and looking at how well they align with the needs of the economy, and then preparing people for those occupations as they exist. So that's kind of common sense if you think about it. If there's a need out there, then we need to align our resources to make that happen. But that's a heavy lift. That's harder to do than it is to say as we look at it. And so we want to provide credentials that do lead to middle-skilled jobs. I'll pause there just for a second because there's something interesting happening in the credential space today, and some of you have seen this occur. So even if we align our programs, many times there are certifications provided, particularly in the technical areas, that have great portability and market value in the workforce, but aren't recognized by higher education. For example, the Google IT support certification is worth about $53,000 in Dallas today. That's a 6-month certification, plenty of jobs that are out there. However, we haven't recognized it historically in our coursework, meaning that the two are out of sync. So we, in this case, work to embed that certification in one of our programs so that, in fact, you could get the credit and build up on that and go to work with the certification. So thinking more about how do we embed certificates first, because 70% of our students are going to work when they're going to college. Wouldn't it be better if they were working at Bank of America than at McDonald's for the salary while they're preparing? So that's kind of what we're thinking as we use this, and we use data then to drive the alignment of programs and understand who we need to partner with in the community and how we really make sure that we're all using our resources in a meaningful way. And so I put this up because it's complicated. And there's a lot of reasons why communities don't work together. This really represents kind of a snapshot of our overall ecosystem, which we refer to as the Career Connected Learner Network. And the idea is that if we're really going to meet the needs of the learner and meet the needs of employers, we have to understand all the steps in the process, and we have to understand how we must work together in order to meet those those needs, because the reality is we cannot do this work alone. And a phrase I often use is autonomy is the enemy. If you're trying to create it on your own to solve the problem, then more than likely you'll miss the mark and get there. And I say this, that as we've built this out, and I'll talk a little bit about it, we've got, this represents 43 K-12 partnerships with PTACs in early college high schools that we operate. It represents 77 companies that are working with us in these high schools, and it represents an entire community coming together in order to meet the needs of both individuals and employers there, because 82% of the students we receive coming out of high school are on free and reduced lunch, meaning that they're still hungry 1 year later when they arrive. That didn't get solved by just simply graduating from high school. So what we've done, we brought in services such as public transportation, that we provide that for 100% of our students. If they want it, they can take advantage. About 35,000 do, good for anywhere. We put food pantries in at our colleges, invested in a mobile pantry to bring fresh produce on a regular basis and dairy products to our students. We've put in an emergency aid program, which, by the way, students appreciated when we had the tornadoes here a couple of weeks ago sweep through the area. We gave out nearly $70,000 with a maximum of $500 each to our students to keep them in school, since they may have lost their books, supplies, cars, other things that they needed. So it really does take an entire community working collaboratively is what this really represents. And just kind of as a side note, the things don't matter as much as understanding the engagement between the organizations and groups, because everywhere you see a dotted line is a potential for failure, because no one owns transitions. And so part of our work has been to figure out, how do we manage a transition so that we solve the problem of graduating from high school and going to college, because that's the biggest failure point that we see, because no one owns that handoff in there. We see the same thing going into the world of work, into the workforce. Students, particularly those from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, tend to go in underemployed at lower wages than that. So how do we help them take advantage of the opportunities, but more importantly, how do we guide them all the way through? And there's about 3 places on here that we need labor market intelligence to really make the right decision, or 4 actually on here to make the right decisions to inform our thinking. And I'll talk about some of these here shortly. Up in the upper left-hand corner, you can barely read it there. It says Dallas County ISDs, PTACs, and early college high schools. We really start working with this coming out with the high schools as they're planning their PTACs. And I'll talk about that's Pathways in Technology, really championed by IBM, created that in New York. It's now rolled out across the country. We happen to have the largest instance of PTACs in the nation today, where we're working with 43, including PTACs in early college high schools with doing. But we start with the labor market data to help us figure out what pathways we create in the high school. So before we even invite the industry partners in, we're looking at what's going on in the economy, what are the needs, where are the gaps, where are the great jobs. Let's make sure that we're building out pathways that lead to jobs that pay a living wage, and then help students on there. So we will bring in a cohort of 125 ninth graders each year. Then we bring in another, and their own pathways, and I'll share a little bit of this to spread that out, so that they can either go all the way through working with our university partners on to receive a baccalaureate degree, or get a certification and enter the world of work. And this is, you can't really see, well, you can up here on one piece of it. It says promise. One of the things that we realized, that these non-consumers had grown up in families that told them that they couldn't go to college because it was unaffordable. That's because most of higher education represents what they do is promoting either brand or lifestyle. Lifestyle in college and lifestyle out of college, which sounds expensive, and frankly it can be. So they don't understand that at community colleges, that most of them, their Pell Grant in our district would have covered the cost. And so students, when we said we have to communicate this in a way that all means all, that every student understands that. So our foundation created a pathway all the way through the associate's degree, and our university partners joined in with a bachelor's degree at no cost for students that would commit to go to college, complete the FAFSA. And just a pause there. When we look at the lowest socioeconomic quartile, there's only one thing that correlates with whether or not they go into post-secondary education, and it's not grades, and it's not school, it's not ranking class, it's whether or not they complete the FAFSA. The free financial aid paperwork is the primary driver. That's the only thing that correlates virtually one-to-one to that relationship. So this really is working at how we engage individuals. So we do the planning, we identify the career pathway, we built that into our career pathways, into the community colleges, which now we're partnering with universities to get that on. So at the point where they're always looking at where the gaps are with our 288 pathways that we've mapped out for various careers going forward, and then also working with our employers to make sure, and some of you know this, employer job descriptions are just terrible. They often don't reflect what's really needed in the job, so helping bring those two in alignment are also incredibly important. So I wanted to put this in context, that this is, when I arrived in Dallas in 2014, literally this was one of the first decisions I made, is to invest in labor market data and labor market intelligence, because how do you know where to put your resources if we don't know what the targets are, if we don't know where we're headed, and how we need to use our resources in a very meaningful way. Now, I will say one other thing here. This is hard work. When I went to the school districts, I was turned down 16 times before we finally got a yes. And once we had the case proved, now we've got 12 school districts in, we've got 43 partnerships that are in there. Universities turned us down, finally got one, now we have 6 that are partnering. Employers also were a bit of a challenge early on to engage, because they want to understand what it is. And frankly, everyone comes at it initially thinking pretty transactional. What's in it for me? And so what we have to do is eventually show that it's what's better for all of us matters more than what's just in it for me. And how do you take that long view? I thought our folks at American Airlines said it best when they were looking at having their employees in one of the high schools at PTAC. By the way, they have 27 there every single day in that one high school, mentoring and supporting students that are there. The conversation we had with them was something like this, that we know you need a workforce, this won't solve it immediately, and their comment was, we're not going away. So we're willing to invest and take the long view, as have the other 70 plus companies that have joined us in this. And so LMI data is absolutely critical to meeting the needs. And it really is, how do we bring together the employers, K-12, individuals, and community, all toward a common goal and understanding what it is. So creating that pathway all the way through to jobs really requires all of us talking. It's amazing how much we can learn about barriers over a cup of coffee. Things that we don't understand about each other, about the systems, the resources that are out there. And certainly everyone wants a great job, but they don't understand necessarily how to go about getting that job. And there was just a kind of a thought. Strata Gallup has been doing a poll. They've polled 350,000 people to date, asking a whole series of questions. These are all college graduates. And one of the questions is, what caused you to choose your field of study? Who was the most influential person or entity in there? And it's not what you think. Number one, by a long shot, is employers. There's hardly a second on the list. So if we're not engaging employers, then we were talking here at the table. I have a friend of mine that is a C-level executive with a large company that does the HVAC work for buildings like this, and football stadiums and arenas and that sort of thing, always needing pipe fitters. Well, where do pipe fitters come from? because, in fact, there's never been a mother in history that said, I want my son or daughter to grow up and be a pipe fitter. There's never been a school counselor that suggested someone become a pipe fitter. It's because some employer influenced them in a way that helped them see that, in fact, I could make a good wage and have a good living if I went that route. So those connections are absolutely critical as we think about how to work together. The other is really looking at that work we try to do to help understand critical fields. And the state of Texas does something through the Higher Education Coordinating Board. We as a college are on a performance funding model where a % of our money comes with how many graduates we graduate in critical fields where there's high demand, high wage, and needs that are out there. But what the state did was to put together a one list for the entire state. And what we've pointed out to them, that makes no sense at all, because the economies of Lubbock and Amarillo are very different from the economies in Dallas or Austin that's there. And so you see the work here that we've done now in partnership with the coordinating board to realign the critical fields, to really point out where the needs are and how we can guide that. So we're now providing this data to the Coordinating Board of Higher Education and others within the state so that we can really leverage our resources. I mean, the whole goal of performance funding is actually to produce the results that are needed. And if you're missing the target, it's kind of hard to hit that. So. As we see it, we really think this has been a game changer for us, and this is how we use Jobs EQ to really inform ourselves internally and our colleges to help our regional partners that are there, to help all of us really understand better what is taking place in the economy. And so we've got lots of examples that are here that we can do this. We can talk about the work that we're doing right now in healthcare with apprenticeship programs, working with American Hospital Association, working with 8 of the largest hospital systems in the nation to create over 50 apprenticeship pathways that are designed to address shortages and make that happen. Or we could talk about the really looking specifically where we see shortages, like in the area of cloud computing, where we work with Amazon Web Services and other companies to create a curriculum that we could roll out that's now being adopted around the state of Texas. Others looking at industry needs and various programs and services to get there. But also, those of you in the site selection, we support that in a very big way in our area, including being a part of the recent Uber announcement of 3,000 jobs coming to the Dallas-Fort Worth area. This one's really a fun one because it not only is bringing great paying jobs, they were very intentionally looking at being close to high poverty areas, supporting diversity, and really engaging with the community in a different way. So if you're familiar with Dallas, they're going to be in the Deep Ellum area, which is more south and east of downtown. The whole challenge for us is program alignment in higher education is not easy because of regulatory rules at the state level, what we have to do, and they've got that all laid out. So when you see some differences there, we really do need the data rather than just simply comply with a template that's already in place within the state. So we use that to really hammer home the need to look at critical fields, to really help make sure that we understand what's there. And frankly, and I'll talk about this, what we don't need to invest in. We also work with employers, and this one, Peloton, which do the bikes and that area. When they were looking at relocating to Dallas or locating in Dallas, how many jobs were they need? What were the skill set that was needed? And if they ran ads, what were they going to get? What were they going to have to pay? How could we help them figure out the solution? And what kind of training would need to go with that? And then like in Uber example, really understanding the neighborhoods, understanding the demographics. And I'll mention one about Chime also, which is really committed to diversity and specifically wants to be in very diverse areas when they build out their company. You know, our team realized early on that when you're coming out of poverty in the lowest socioeconomic quartile, you have no idea what a living wage is. You don't know what the difference between a $30,000 a year salary and a $60,000 a year salary. One is more, but you don't know what that means to you because you've not understood this. And you don't know what's a living wage. $10 an hour may sound great to some people. And if you're a single male living in Dallas and willing to share a small apartment, then you can get by with that if you're using public transportation and some other things. But if you're married and are not married, if you're a single mom or with one child, you're going to need a very different wage, closer to $24 an hour to get there. So we use this to build out a living wage calculator that we have embedded in our website to help students understand this and then track them into jobs so that it takes into account things like healthcare costs, housing, food, transportation, others, and it also shows them what they're could expect in given areas or given fields to see those salaries increase. You know, in certain technical areas, what happens, you go in at one level, and then if you don't keep training and getting skills, you plateau or maybe even that job goes away at some point in the future. So helping them understand here, and you can see once you get the numbers, you can find training, contact an advisor, learn more how to do this. All of this is driven by labor market information to help guide the decisions of students. I mentioned PTAC because we think this, frankly, has been eye-opening for me. Very, very quickly, I'll give you just an example of the impact that these schools can have. And if you don't have them in your community, see what you can do to get them, because it makes a big difference in the lives of individuals, and it brings in the type of community engagement that I think is so important that we have. So I mentioned we have 43, and I'll hit that. They're in there, but what really I think matters in this is what it does to the entire school. So let's take Samuel High School in Pleasant Grove in East Dallas, southeast East Dallas, 99.9% economically disadvantaged students, high poverty area. We went in and partnered in 2010. I wasn't here at the time, but we did with an early college high school. The school was about to be shut down by the state. They had 9% of their graduates going on to get a post-secondary credential, but they were only graduating about 70% of the students that came in to that. And the school was so bad, we do have a school choice option in Dallas, so that parents would then have their children bus, 6 bus loads a day would leave that school. We went in with an early college high school. In this case, it wasn't quite the PTAC model, but it was very close to it, and we've since refined that. So when I arrive, I'm looking at the data of the school. Now it has 58% of the students going on to get a post-secondary credential. It has a 93% graduation rate and 2 buses coming in every day to the school. The 3rd best performing school in the Dallas Independent School District, which is the 2nd largest district in Texas. So I say this, it not only changes, and what we do, we bring in a cohort, about a quarter of the school, into the early college high school, but it has a transformative effect over the entire school, particularly when we can combine that with programs like the Dallas County Promise and others. The partners are critical. As I mentioned, we're now in 43 schools. It's pretty much a who's who of companies and organizations, a lot of large ones, and some of them are in multiple schools, like Microsoft is in 2 of the schools, and others are embedded. But what they do, these employers not only mentor students and engage them in the process, and they can talk to them about real jobs. They bring the intelligence part. While we use the LMI to plan these schools, they bring it real, make it real to the students through this process and help them understand what the opportunities. So this year we'll impact about 22,000 high school students that are enrolled with us through this effort. Real quickly, we also work with communities. This is again a high poverty area with the Victory Meadows, a lot of unemployed individuals in the area. The folks there, the community leaders came together, approached us and said, can you help us understand what kind of training could be provided for folks in the community that's within walking distance, easy transportation, so that they can get better paying jobs. And so we did that, came up where we offered, in partnership with the Victory Meadows Foundation, with the Apartment Association of Greater Dallas, a property management certification program that then led them to jobs. And so we can track the impact of this. We also work with nonprofits. This is a Metro Crest, which is a nonprofit that provides various social services from mental health to other needs. If you look at Dallas County, it's up close to Plano, up in that end, in the Carrollton Farmers Branch, kind of the northwest corner of the area, which has a little bit higher salary average than other parts of the county. But so their question was, we have limited resources. So where do we need to be targeting these resources to have the greatest impact on the people with greatest need? So you see, we really looked at what we see here is a $70,000 income disparity within that community. We identified one specific zip code where that was significantly below the average, and so that they were able to then target their services to that location. The other chart here, you can also see where the poverty variances are occurring in the area. And again, that same zip code had the highest incidence of federal, meeting the federal definition of poverty that was there. When we think about students, particularly entering the workforce, and what employers are looking for there, this also is where we need labor market information for insight into guiding that. So that now we can do some things, but we need partnerships to do other things that are there, because there are three things that that employers are going to look for. They're going to look for, do they have the knowledge? In other words, if it requires a certification, how do we know that they've gained that, and can we provide that proof? Many times they also need skills. Now, some programs provide the skills, some skills have to come through other ways, and they need experience in some form. So as we look at our program areas and really try to structure and align how we want to invest the resources to solve the various needs, we've got our Work Ready U is helping individuals get the high school diploma or GED. We work with the parents of our Promise students. We work with ISDs and others too, but a lot of that is around the knowledge piece of it. So then we have to bring in the employers in some form for the skills, which is why we like internships, but why we also really like apprenticeship programs, as as we think that's the future going forward, to bring the knowledge, skills, and experience together in a package that both meets the needs of the individuals and requires the collaboration of the business partner in order to make that happen. We can't do these in isolation of each other. Another way that we use JobsEQ is just looking at our own programs and reviewing them. We have a program evaluation process that we go through where we look at jobs, we look at wages, we decide where we want to expand programs, contract programs, hire new faculty, invest in facilities. We're about to go through a massive building effort. Actually, we'll spend over $1 billion within the district over the next 6 years. We want to really do that right and use that money in a smart way, and so that we can support the programs that we need that are going to lead to good paying jobs. My goal in this is to raise the average salary of our graduates as a result of the investments we're making and how we align these to go forward. This is just taking that and getting more granular. In this case, geographic information systems specialists and others is a growing field with above living wage. Automotive technology, growing field above living wage. But so we look at that, and that really helps us to figure out what we want to invest in. So we can look at various fields. This one here happens to be looking at a pharmacy tech position, looking at the jobs that are open, what are the starting salaries, median, what can expect, how many jobs are being added in the region annually. And so we can then begin to target and put together the programs and market them in such a way that gives those individuals that opportunity that they're inclined to go there. But occasionally, we also will say no. As a result of, this is a real example where we were approached to look at a zoo science program that would offer, and decided that when we looked at it, it was impractical because the wages were minimum wage, and most of the individuals working ended up working in the parking lot or taking tickets. So, and we were talking earlier, it's real easy to take an anecdotal comment, convert it into a program, unless you really understand what's going on behind it, and to make those decisions based on data, not just a relationship with somebody that may be quite persuasive. This is one too. Chime Solutions is a interesting company out of Atlanta that is expanding into the Dallas area. They do call centers. What's unique about them, they go into high poverty areas and they bring local people in and train them to do that, giving them above average wages in the process. But before they located, they really wanted to know what is the competition in the area for call centers. So here you see the bubbles indicating where the competition is, and I can tell you they're going to be locating far from where, this is all of North Texas, not just Dallas County. They're going to be locating more in the southern part of Dallas County as a result, where they can have the greatest impact, and frankly, a little less competition for the folks that are there. This is one where Parkland Hospital is our public hospital in Dallas. They are very tied into the communities. In fact, we're doing a partnership with them with a clinic right now. They're really looking at how do they make their workforce look more like the population that they're serving. And so for this, they wanted to understand that population and how the diverse groups were distributed throughout Dallas County. You see the map there that lays that out, which then helped them in planning how to staff, what to look for as they went into various communities and build that out. Right now they're building about 4 clinics, and so they really want to understand that specific population that they're going into. And kind of in wrapping this up, I just stressed that I couldn't put all the logos up, but what we're really about, and I don't really have a phrase for it, but what we try to do is the opposite of hoarding. All of us come together to collaborate, to work toward the common good, and you just see here some of the examples of the groups that we work with in order to better meet the needs of individuals, help our employers, and grow our communities. And I think I'm out of time, but thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to share it with you this morning.